Brother Cecil. You should fear no danger.
Pardon me?
You should fear no danger.
Okay, well, you're going to have to turn me sideways and get my ear pointed towards your mouth. Okay. This one's dead.
Okay.
And this is half dead.
There, let's go like this then. There we go.
Okay, good.
This is called the white noise, which is our time for me to ask you questions about your life. So we want to hear the life story of Brother Cecil Walker. When were you born?
1927. Did you say when or where?
Where were you born?
Oh, Dayton, Washington, up in the mountains.
And tell us a little bit about your family. How many children were in your family?
There were 4 boys and 1 girl.
And where were you in the birth order? First, last, middle?
No, I was number 3.
Number 3. And what did your parents do?
My dad worked for the Pacific Power and Light Company. He was a lineman. And then he was promoted to outside troubleshooter, and he went around the whole community fixing anything that was electric, including electric fences. And I learned from him what an electric fence was.
So how big was Dayton? That's a very small town.
Yes, it is. It's right down in the very southeast corner of the state.
Is it a farming community?
Yes, it's all wheat. Now they plant a lot of peas and lima beans, but it's mostly wheat country. You know, it's dry land farming.
And so, tell us about your schooling. Was there a school nearby your home that you attended?
Not nearby, but we had to drive about 15 miles from our old ranch down to a little place called Bowles Junction. And they had a 1-room schoolhouse there, and there were from the 1st to the 8th grade in that 1 room.
And so you attended all through 8th grade and then went to high school?
No, I attended that school to the 3rd grade, and then I disappeared.
What do you mean?
Well, schooling was off, on and off, on and off, on and off, you know. We did a week and then nothing for a month, and then a week and nothing for a month.
Is that because you were working on the ranch?
Well, no, it was simply, most of it was because of the distance from the ranches to the school, you know, transportation. We didn't have tractors then, we had horses. And to get one of those big old Belgians or Persians, you couldn't get a saddle on him because he was too wide for the saddle, you know. And putting him in a harness was a heck of a job. So it was mostly, we walked, which wasn't bad because we got to throw rocks at everything. Everything around, you know.
So you went to a different school as you got older?
Yes. Yeah, we went to, then finally, after the 3rd grade, I went to school in Waitsburg itself. And they finally got some buses that came almost up to our ranch. And so we had to walk about a mile or a mile and a half to catch the bus. But that was nothing to us then, you know. We had a game we played. I can't remember the scoring, but only the boys played this game.
Mm.
You'd spot a cow pie, and from a distance you had to judge whether it was fresh or not, because the sun, you know, would cook them up. And so if you were it, then you had to call it. Well, that one, that's an old one. Okay, prove it. So you had to prove it by stomping on it. Well, luckily, a little creek by the name of Whiskey Creek ran through our ranch. And by the time we got up to our lane, why, we get down in the creek and we get all of this cow pie off.
How old were you when you got your first kiss?
Oh, God. That's so long ago, my memory doesn't go back that far.
So you at some point were in high school, and then something significant happened in your life. Didn't what drew you to enlist in the Marines?
My brother was just older than me. He was a Marine. And then I had several cousins that were in the Marine. And that was the only thing that I really knew, was that I didn't know there was an Army or a Navy. It was just, that was the only military thing that I knew about, was the Marine Corps.
And how old were you when you enlisted?
16.
So how did that work?
And I haven't gotten a bit smarter.
So was there an age limit that was sort of overlooked?
Well, I suppose there was at that time, but at that time the war was on, and they needed people, and they didn't care how old you were. If you could carry a gun, that was it.
So what year did you enlist?
1943.
And so after you went through basic training, how long you got orders to go somewhere?
Yep. We got orders to go to Hawaii, and they were in the process of creating the 5th Division. And oh, by the way, before I got to Hawaii for the Navy, they used to march us up to one end of the San Diego base, and there was a channel of water that separated the Navy base from the Marine base. And they would march us up there, and we'd stand beside the water, and our drill sergeant would say, "Okay, go at it." And we got to cuss all the Navy guys rolling up and down. And if you didn't have enough cuss words, the gunnery sergeant would chew you out.
So you shipped from San Diego to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And how long were you in Hawaii?
Oh, about, boy, that's hard. San Diego, you know, was sunshine and warm, and Hawaii was sunshine and warm, so.
All blends together.
Yeah.
Was it still 1943 or was it 44?
43. Yeah. And then in 1944, I was just basically doing guard duty, you know, marching around this big water tank that wasn't going anywhere, but you had to guard it.
And then, where were you on December 7th?
San Diego, I think.
And what was your first deployment?
Well, the first deployment was Iwo Jima. The whole division, you know.
And was that from Hawaii or from San Diego?
No, they took a whole mess of us out of Hawaii. And if I remember correctly, this camp we were in Hawaii was way up in the mountains. I think it was Camp Palau. And they took a whole mess of us and took us off to New Caledonia. And we ran around in the mud there for a while, and then they said that we were well trained, and then we went to Iwo Jima.
And did they tell you what the objective was?
Oh yeah, they were very good at that. They had all sorts of maps, and they even had on the ship that I was on, they had I think they call them a sand table now, but it was a mock-up of the island, and they pinpointed all of the heavy caliber guns and so forth.
So how were you put ashore in an LST?
No, I was put ashore in a Higgins boat. We unloaded off the LSTs and the transport ships into these Higgins, and then we went in Higgins boats. And that was a bummer.
Well, when you approached shore in the Higgins boats, was that under fire, or was that just?
Yeah, no, it was under fire. They started the thing before we ever unloaded off the transports. They were shooting the ships were really slamming it into the mountain, into the island.
But were you receiving fire?
Oh yeah. You'd see a big splash, and occasionally a boat would go down and get blown up. And
do you recall what was going through your mind at the time?
Yeah, I wanted the hell out of there. I was so scared I couldn't spit.
And so, when you landed, can you recall the moments? Were you running toward cover at the head of the beach?
Well, the beach was black sand, and you sank into it up about halfway to your knee. You couldn't run. You'd take one step and you'd go back two, and then finally we got up to this bench that was actually the surface of the whole island, and then we hit some solid ground. But it was just, all the foliage had been blown off the shrubs and whatnot, and it was a mess.
How far away were the opposing troops? Could you see them, or could you just tell where they were?
Well, we mostly saw where they were, because they were in little spider holes and little caves, and they were so dug in that you couldn't see. Occasionally you'd see one, but he was usually dead. And we crossed my outfit. We landed just on the north side of Suribachi, the base of it, and we crossed the island there to the west side, and then headed headed north. And any hole or cave or dark spot, you shot at it because that's where they're hiding. They're all underground. And so you don't know whether you hit anybody, or I don't know whether I hit anybody or not, you know, because I suppose I did. I don't know.
Were you were you in automatic then, or did you have time to think about what was happening, or were you just going and following orders?
No, my gunnery sergeant, he was God, and I'm way down here, and he's way up here, and he would say go, and we went, and you know, they tried always to kind of keep us in a squad, but that didn't last too long because so many men were wounded and killed.
How did you sustain your injury? How did you get wounded?
I got blown up.
What happened?
Well, I was sitting in this crater, and my partner and I were, our squad had already moved, and we were supposed to join them. And Archie and I got up to run, and all of a sudden I'm in the air, and then I come down, and it must have been a pretty heavy caliber artillery. But it went into the crater and buried itself and then blew up, and we went up with it.
And
then the next thing I knew, I was on an airplane going to Guam, and that was 3 days later.
So you were knocked unconscious?
Yeah. It didn't make much difference. I didn't have any brains anyway.
Do you know what happened during those 3 days?
No.
What were your injuries?
Well, they had me loaded up with morphine because everybody had a little medical kit, and there was 3 or 4 syringes of morphine. It's supposed to be, you know, it had a hypodermic needle on it, and you stab it right through your clothes, and it was 1 dose of morphine. And boy, that's the best thing that was ever invented for wartime, I'll tell you that.
And so when you went back to Guam, how long were you in the hospital there?
I was only on Guam about a week. And then it was back to the States, and I was in Balboa Hospital. You know Balboa?
I do.
Oh, you're a Navy man. Of course you know Balboa.
And so how long did it take you to recover where you could be upright and walking again?
I was in Balboa about a month, and then they shipped a bunch of us north to a hospital right on the edge of Los Angeles at a place called Corona. And I was there until October when I was discharged. And so that was about 8 or 9 months that I was in the hospital.
And so when you were discharged, from the time you enlisted to the time you were discharged, how much service time did you have?
Oh, about 3 years. About 3.
These days we hear so much about